as far as X-Men goes, there's not been a whole lot as far as excitement in the comic books. This, however, does not mean that we can't have premium excitement in cinema. I think there's an opportunity to really do something special. And look, the comic books can come around as well. I'm not gonna hold my breath and count the 10. I have no idea what's going on at Marvel with X-Men comics. I'm very confident that they could bring in some good writers and artists and do something, and hopefully that happens in the future. Anyway, this story right here from superhero comic book movie.com. X-Men director Jake Schreier reveals which comic book run MCU reboot will take inspiration from. This, of course, is something that I'm curious about. Although Marvel Studios' long-awaited X-Men reboot is slowly but surely starting to come together, we still know very little about which storylines the movie will follow and the characters that will make up the new team. We do know that Thunderbolts director Jake Schreier will take the helm, and the filmmaker recently revealed that Sonny Lee Sung Jin, Beef and Joanna Calo, the Bear, had come aboard to write a new draft of Michael Leslie's script. Now Schreier has revealed which X-Men comic, which comics X-Men run, which Marvel Comics X-Men run, oh, I can get that out, will at least partially inspire the MCU reboot. Let's see what he has to say. They have come in and are working on a draft right now, which is really exciting to be able to put that group of people together again, he tells Collider. I also think just having the time to kind of sit back, and I've just been digging into so many of the old comics and the entire Claremont, but here we go. Here we look. He said Claremont's name, and I instantly got excited for what could possibly come. This doesn't mean the movie's going to be good, but if he's pulling from Claremont's run, he's pulling from some really great storylines. The entire Claremont run. And just going through stuff and really trying to think about what can we do? Well, that feels new. What can we do well, that feels new and feels different. And that hasn't been done well before. Obviously, there's such an incredible cinematic tradition of those comics, but what can we do? And how can we put our spin on what that is? Now, I hope when he says spin, he is not talking about completely changing something up, because I don't like that. I understand changing things up for the big screen, and I understand making an adaptation that is palatable to all audiences. Spin is a kind of scary word. You don't want to mess X-Men up. X-Men has been done okay by Fox. I'm not gonna say it's been, a complete disaster. I feel like some of the stories, like the Dark Phoenix saga, I think that story was rushed. That's not a story you can tell in one movie. The Dark Phoenix saga can be really dragged out, similar to the Infinity Gauntlet saga. To me, it's in that same vein. You don't just tell that in one movie. Claremont's work on X-Men covers a lot of ground, over 20 years in total. And some of his most iconic storylines, the Dark Phoenix saga, the Days of Future Past, for example. The Days of Future Past is one that I hope they pass on. Just because the time travel thing in the MCU has been done. It's been done well. I know they're going to do it in Doomsday with the multiverses, and I get that. But I think they can do something deeper and more intricate and a little more, they can do something else, something fresh with a new X-Men reboot. for example, have already been adapted, however, loosely for the big screen. Assuming Schreier and co have no interest in rehashing anything from the 20th Century Fox era, there's still plenty of there's still plenty to mine from, the likes of Inferno, God Loves, Man Kills, The Brood Saga, and Mutant Massacre. In a separate interview with MovieWeb.com, the director reiterated that they are setting out to do something with the mutant heroes that has not been covered in films. And does he say something here? Let's see. Well, I guess
We're areas that we can explore where it feels like we're doing something new. We are aiming to do something that feels like a fresh start and going for something that feels new. And really, like, something that Kevin has pushed for is this idea of what can we do that, within this world. It's such a massive world, and I've spent, the year just kind of rereading a ton of it, and like the entire Claremont run.
And this is always good when you have somebody that's actually going to the comic books and rereading. Obviously, and I've brought this up before, I'll say it again right here, just because I think this is something that needs to be said. Not everything in the comic book can relate well to the big screen, and thus changes are made. Understandable. People who write books, which, as you guys know, if you've been following my page, I've started writing a book, and I understand why certain things are changed, because you get to the big screen, you can only fit so much. Some things are maybe just a little too grand and too expensive. Now, obviously, Marvel, I'd say Disney maybe doesn't have the money they once had. I'm sure the investors are a little gun shy on throwing a bunch of money into an X-Men movie, but they do have more money than most to put into this movie. But doing something new and fresh, definitely good. And the X-Men are expansive. There are so many stories. I remember watching the X-Men movies and thinking, man, there's so many other stories that they could tell that might, in a lot of ways, be slightly better, maybe a lot better than the things we got. Okay, so personally, this is my personal opinion. I think the Dark Phoenix saga could be done over again, personally, just because I don't think the 20th Century Fox version, I don't think they did it real good justice. Again, just my personal opinion.
So many different, the great work that Grant Morrison did. I mean, there's so many different interesting takes within this world, and that shouldn't be a clue as to anything. I mean, that's just for background and just to kind of live in the world and, how deep that world is. Just thinking about, like, what are the corners of it? What are the sides of it that maybe haven't been, done so brilliantly in so many of these great movies, that we can sort of, we're areas that we can explore where it feels like we're doing something new.
Well, and even though it didn't work out, I spoke to Steven when he was promoting Invincible, like, hey, we got to get you back with Jake, and he was singing your praises. He wants to come back, so if you find a space for him, as Mojo or something, get Steven in there.
I love Steven very dearly, and he's one of the very best actors that we have. So, I mean, I would never not be looking for places to, but no specifics. So,
all right, there we go. Collider also caught up with Sung Jin, who remained tight-lipped about what the creative team has planned, though he did reveal that he's a huge fan of one character in particular. Oh man, I don't know what I'm allowed to say. Where's my publicist? I know that there was a previous draft, but I also know that Joanna Calo, Jake Schreier, and Steven, the producer, and Kevin Feige, and Lou Desposito, we've been meeting regularly to try and create a new draft. I love working with these people, these frequent collaborators, and so I think the goal for us is just to keep getting in rooms and keep spitballing. Spitballing is not bad, but I really do want them to have a well laid out script based on the actual run of the comic books, again, some things are going to change. I get that. But close enough, because when you look at the Infinity Gauntlet saga, there were things that were changed, right? Like everything wasn't as it was in the comic books, but it was done well enough that I don't think I have not met one comic book fan, Marvel comic book fan, that outright just did not like the Infinity Saga at all. Obviously, there were places where many fans, myself included, was like, they should have done this or should have changed that. But it was generally done well, taken care of well. I have such fond memories of me and my dad, he added, Saturday morning, every morning, waking up, I think it was 9 or 10 a.m. Central Time, and we'd watch every single episode, read the comics, and I was a huge Gambit fan growing up. So the love is very strong. You always love to hear people who are working on these things who love the comic books. And sometimes I think it's easy for us to Monday morning quarterback when we see these people, they create things, and it's like, oh, why'd they change this or change that? It's easy to say that, and I get it. I have the same complaints. And I'm not saying that you have to make these changes, but you don't know what these people, like the guardrails that are put around them, right? The parameters that are put around them of what they can and can't do and what the budget is. There's some things I've read books where I remember thinking to myself, if they turned this book into a movie, that budget would be astronomical to pull some of this off. So sometimes things have to change. Channing Tatum will reprise his Deadpool and Wolverine role as Gambit for Avengers Doomsday, and rumor has it that he will also be part of the reboot roster. I think that's good. As much as I did not think Channing Tatum was going to fit that role, I'm not a huge fan of him per se as an actor. I don't dislike him. I first saw him in the Step Up movies, and I that first Step Up movie, I loved it. I thought it was great, especially for the time. He's had some movies after that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I think he's a decent enough actor. And I was surprised when I saw Deadpool and Wolverine at how much I enjoyed his Gambit character. So I'm not necessarily mad at that. Though nothing has been officially announced, the belief is that X-Men is scheduled to hit theaters on May 5th, 2028. Oh, they got a while. And I wonder how everything else for Marvel is going to pan out in between doing all that. But needless to say, I think this seems like good news coming for X-Men, at least some good news. And I'm looking forward to see where this goes. And now, look, I want this to be good. I want this to be good. It may not be. There's no guarantee, but I really do want it to be good.